Welcome, everybody. Yes, I am John Foster, and I'm a naturalist. For me, the term naturalist applies very well. It's an old-fashioned term. I could call myself a biologist or a wildlife researcher, and I do occasionally. But a naturalist is somebody who goes out in nature, investigates, and brings it to the public for education. And that suits me really well. When I started, I thought, well, should I be just a scientist or should I be just a teacher? And then I fell into the middle ground, which is a naturalist. And tonight we're going to talk about not necessarily just predators, like as in how many pups does a coyote have and how many deer do they eat and what. It's not going to be that way. If you come to see that, I guarantee you're going to be disappointed on that end. It's the twist. And anybody who's been out in the woods with me knows that there's always a twist. I can't ever give a straight answer. I always joke. But with predators, what we do is we tend to have a mindset, a very human mindset. In other words, in our mind, there's the boss and the employee. There's the fence between you and your neighbor. It's a relationship that is not necessarily friendly or balanced, and I think we as humans bring that into the woods. So we go into the woods, we look for tooth, claw, and blood. And that's really not what's out there. Somebody once said, if you think a certain way, you're going to see a certain way. So we bring that into the woods, and when we're out there looking, that's exactly what we see. We see a dead turkey, and we go, a coyote killed it, or a bobcat killed it. It could have been 1,000 things that killed it. And very often, the predator-prey relationship, the classic predator-prey relationship, is a relationship that exceeds the bounds of those two animals. Let's say we've got a coyote and a turkey. It's a landscape or an ecological view of the whole. Okay, a coyote killed a turkey. That's not a bad thing. In our mind, it's a really bad thing for the turkey, but it's not. It's an ecological view. It's a good thing that turkey is laying dead on the side of it, because there's going to be maggots that are going to be eating it, and other things are going to be chewing on the bones, and there's a whole series of moths that specialize on feathers that are going to have that available. The coyote is going to be able to give milk for its pups, and on, and one of those pups is going to die, and then the maggots is going to eat that. And that's the real predator-prey relationship that I want to underscore tonight. So if we can kill the lights, that's cool. And then we'll open it up for question and answers. I have a few plants in the audience that will ask embarrassing, silly questions. One's over there and one's over here. So if they run out of questions, please feel free. All right. Any other questions to start with? Any thoughts? I'm also, I'm officially announcing in public that this is my last slideshow. The next program I give will be all digital.
Uh-oh.
What was that? Yeah, no kidding. All right. Predator or prey?
So cute.
Both.
So cute.
There you go. See, my presentation is already done. Yeah, if you're a whole host of animals, this is a primary prey. This is a little red squirrel. It's got a bundle full of lichen and pine needles. But if you happen to be a pine cone, this is a super predator. If you happen to be, well, I'm going to stretch it a little bit. If you happen to be an acorn, this is a super predator. Generally, red squirrels don't eat acorns. Gray squirrels eat acorns, but never say never with nature. But the point is that we all think of this thing as a predator. It's as a prey. It's, to a lot of things, it's a super predator. If you happen to be a baby bird, you're looking at the last thing you're looking at before it eats you. And again, as humans, we tend to think that's bad. I mean, in our life, death is bad. In the natural world, if death didn't occur, the natural world would not occur. It is all really, I'm sorry to get a little kind of Buddhist, I guess, on you, but that's the reality of it. You've got to have these cycles of life and death and birth and whatnot. Red squirrels I like because if you're in a conifer stand, they're mostly a species of conifer forest. That's kind of their specialty. The gray squirrels are the ones that are really in deciduous forests. If you happen to live in a neighborhood, generally we favor deciduous trees, so you tend to have more gray squirrels in neighborhoods. But the red squirrel, it likes to cache things. So if you're ever in the woods and you find a pile of acorns, especially late in the year, or pile of pine cones, this little guy has cut them green from the tops of the trees and then scurried them around in piles. The idea is green is so the seeds will still be intact. They don't wait until the cones open and then the seeds are dispersed. And they almost always pile them underneath things. Think of yourself lying in bed. You have your sheet over you. And your toes form a little tent, right? With the sheet. It doesn't go right down, form-fitting your toes. It forms a little tent. It forms a little tent along the side of your leg. There's a channel there. And that's what this guy is doing. He's putting all his pine cones underneath things. So a down limb, a down tree, something like that. So when the snow falls, it doesn't completely bury the pine cone. And there's an avenue that it can easily live under. So red squirrels tend to be what's called subnivean. They live under the snowpack during the whole rest of the year, rest of the winter. Consider in February when it's a minus 20 degree day, that zone between the ground and the snow level is a comfy 35 degrees or so. So it's a perfect place to live. They tend to live under the snow most of the year, and they made their little home and their little stash under the snow. All right. Here's another classic predator-prey relationship. A fisher cat and a porcupine. Now, I'm from Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, we call them fisher cats. Up here, I've been corrected so many times. They're only called fishers up here. They're neither cats nor fishers, so, they're fisher cats. Anyways, the fisher cat on the right-hand side wants to eat the porcupine on the left. The porcupine on the left has got its back up. You can see it's got its fully quilled up, and that's a best way to protect itself. Generally, what the porcupine would do is it would be in some kind of inaccessible place, and it would give whatever was attacking it or molesting it its back. So it would only give its back, right? Fully quilled, almost impenetrable. The fisher cat is trying to figure out how to get in front of that animal where there's no quills, or virtually no quills, on its face. And the idea is to either blind it or start bloodletting, scarring the face so that the animal will eventually lose some of its blood and not be quite on its fighting ready stance. Fisher cats, they eat a lot of things. They certainly do eat porcupines, but they eat berries and mice and other animals' scat and a whole variety of things. It's a lot of effing work to go and get a porcupine. So if I can get my food more easily, it does. And if that means chasing down a berry bush, then so be it. Chase down a berry bush. So, the reason I bring up these two is they're textbook predator-prey. However, the thing that affects porcupine births and mortality has been found to be connected, and I haven't read the entire thesis, sunspots. So we think of predator-prey, right? We got to have fisher cats, because fisher cats will control porcupines. But if we really look at the predator-prey relationship, the damn porcupines are controlled by something completely arbitrary, sunspots. The ratio of sunspots are correlated to the population declines and booms of porcupines. How? Why? Don't know. We saw it, but that's the reality that we deal with. A bunch of years ago, I was asked to do participate in a necropsy. In other words, an autopsy of dead animals, and it was all fisher cats. And we had a whole bunch of them, and we'd skin them. My job was to skin them all out, and then the other biologists would look at their guts and whatnot. It's kind of like voodoo. You know, you look at the animal's guts and see what's going on, see if you're going to get a pay raise that year or whatnot. But when we come to the big male fish cat, incidentally, a big male fisher cat, that's another thing we do in nature, is we exaggerate tremendously. A big fisher cat is about 13 pounds. That's a big male. Anyways, when we get to the males, I would always forget to have my gloves on, and as soon as I get to the chest, I would be reminded, because they always had quills embedded in their chest. So you get the skin out and you grab it out. So they certainly do eat porcupines, but it's not their exclusive food. Here is a. Sorry, I've got to get my pointer. This is a track of a porcupine in mud, and it's one of my favorite tracks. This morning I was tracking a bobcat, which is also nice, but there's nothing like the beautiful detail of a porcupine. Let's see if my eyes are better than yours. Yep, that's it. All right. That's the front. That's the rear track, and that's the front track. It is going towards the ceiling. The direction of travel is up. So you've got these beautiful smooth pads, and if you were able to look really close to this, fine mud is a perfect substrate. It's a perfect place to look at things. You can really see the texture, the little bumps on the animal's pads. It's a beautiful little detail. But the thing that people may be missing is this. These things up here, and way up there, those are the claws of the porcupine. Wow. Porcupines have huge claws, huge, long claws, perfectly well adapted for climbing trees. Perfectly well adapted for climbing trees. I like to think of them as the arboreal beaver. Right? Beavers cut down the trees to get to the top. Porcupines just can climb to get to the top. Here's a couple of dens of it. Typical den, rock outcropping with a nice little small cave inside. Same thing here. Very often poop all over the place.
Porcupines?
Porcupine poop, yeah, that's porcupine poop. This is a hemlock tree after a winter's visit with a porcupine.
Good heavens.
And again, don't look at that as all us humans are all here saying that's damage. No, that's not damage. Just the porcupine ate the top of the tree. It's not damage. That tree will continue to flourish. There's tons of other trees out there that the porcupine has not affected at all. This may be setting up a whole series of events that we're completely ignorant of. Don't worry, the tree, if it dies, so what? But the porcupine is going out to the very end of the branch to eat the finer material, the stuff that is more easily digestible. And that's the same thing the beaver's doing, really. It's cutting down the tree to get to all the bark. It wants to more or less ignore the wood. The wood is almost indigestible. The bark is digestible, is difficult enough, but that's the most digestible part. Good trail, porcupine trail in the snow. I mean, they're like little tanks. And so they just waddle along and they make these troughs in the snow. And of course the porcupine.
What did you feed it?
I fed that an apple. He got drunk on apples. This guy was such a comedian. I felt really, generally I don't do things like this to animals, but we had a bunch of sour, kind of off, should have been cider apples, and we gave it to this guy, and I took a couple of rolls of film, and he was definitely toasted by the end of the photo. But you can see, nice, look at the little eye shining there. But the head is nicely quilled. All underneath, all that's guard hair. That's really not quills. That's all guard hair. How it keeps itself warm. But if you were to piss this guy off, it would be all quills. You'd see this thing is all quills. And porcupines they're an animal that can just kind of wander through their existence with very little effort. Very few things really molest it. It doesn't go far in its range. Most of New England is a perfect place for a porcupine. They don't really have a hard life. The hardest part is sleeping up in a tree in the winter. They love, in the spring of the year and the summer of the year, they love to go out through fields and whatnot. It's very common to see them in fields. One of their favorite foods, which I think is actually oddly coincidental, is raspberry. They love to eat raspberry. Maybe that's how they grow their quill.
Raspberry.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing, like asparagus, the whole thing. Yeah, eat it all up. They love raspberry, black raspberry and red raspberry. And of course, acorns. They do love acorns. At that time of the year when acorns are coming out, they'll tend to climb the trees and cut the acorns off the branches. No sense sharing. They're going to go up, grab it. So you will sometimes find, if you're out in the woods, you'll find small branches. Small branches. Sometimes hanging up in the trees, sometimes on the ground. They're cutting the end of the branch off to get to the acorns. So they get the acorns before it rains.
Do they eat multifloral roses?
Not as often as you want, but yes. I think your big ally is for multiflora is voles. Voles will eat the bark around the very, very base of it during some deep winter snows, but not enough to.
We don't have those anymore. The deep winter snow.
Oh yeah, no kidding. I was listening to NPR and they were talking that anybody under 27. Okay, everybody else is listening to it too. Anybody under 27 has not what?
Headache. Normal winter.
Yeah, colder than normal.
Less than hotter than average.
Right, hasn't had a cold month. Has had a hot month.
Warmer than average. Unseasonably warm. What is buckthorn?
I remember the 27th.
What eats buckthorn? Bucks. I think I have a serious answer. I didn't think on that for a minute. Buckthorn, I think is eaten by the fall cankerworm, which is the inchworm. And again, I would say that voles might. And any of us who know about earthworms, y'all know about earthworms. Earthworms are a bad invasive species. They should be stomped out any chance you get. You see them walking across the sidewalk, step on the little guys. They work hand and foot, or hand and whatever, to help promote invasives like the buckthorn. But that's a whole other program. All right, where am I? I was tracking this guy this morning. This is not the same photo, but this is a photo of a bobcat. Bobcat track. This is a photo of a bobcat track. Bobcat tracks, as opposed to the other predator that we'll talk about. Bobcat tracks, nice bobcat track. Their feet are so fuzzy that their fuzz on the front of their toes is here. So remember the porcupine, right? The claw was way out front. This is their big, fuzzy, furry, fat foot. Bobcat tracks. This is the pad. Cat tracks, kind of. And give me license on this. Bobcat tracks, cat tracks, tend to have more pad than toes proportionally. So when we see a coyote track later on, we'll see that more easily. And cat tracks tend to be somewhat asymmetrical. The pad and the toes don't quite line up. So these toes are just slightly canted to the left. Just slightly. If you track a few hundred of these animals, you get to see it more easily, but that's that. Bobcats. Yeah, this is the awe shot. Yeah. Well, what happens if I tell you that one of those kits is going to turn into maggot food? What are you going to say? No!
Is there another one?
How many are there?
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, there's two of them. Right here. Yeah, that's the circle of life. Good. One of these kids are going to turn into maggot food. Yay! Good job. Yay! Love it. Things keep going around. I was teaching a course, and incidentally, I'll do some shameless promotion at the moment. I teach for conservation groups all over the place, but one of my real favorites is a 6-month-long ecology-based course that covers everything from soil ecology to botany to large mammal studies and all the rest. And I was teaching a segment on ferns to some students of mine. And I could hear this kind of squeaky bird meow thing off to the side, and I was getting irritated because it was sidetracking my focus. And so finally I said, heck with it, I can't, we're not going to get this program done unless I go find that bird. And I thought it was like a yellow-bellied sapsucker nest or something. Yellow-bellied sapsucker babies are the noisiest babies out there. I don't know why they are. You tend to think that everybody should shut up so they don't get eaten. You can always find a yellow-bellied sapsucker nest by the noise that the nestlings are incessantly noisy. So I stepped off, and it was like from here to the screen. I stepped off, and all of a sudden, bang! Out from a rock outcrop came a bobcat.
Whoa.
And there was left her kitten, looking at us. Blue, little open, just barely open eyes, just this cutest little thing. He said, everybody's got 3 seconds to either grab your camera and take a shot, but we got to get the hell out of here. I mean, this was a big oops. If I had known, I never would have gotten that close. But we tend to think of predators as exactly that, you know? It's a bobcat. It's going to attack me. What did she do? She took off. The reason that she took off was she wants to reproduce next year. So if I fight to the death in the woods, what good is that? I don't get my genes passed around. Same thing with bears. I mean, I do a lot of research with black bears. You have absolutely nothing to worry about black bears east of the Mississippi. You have absolutely nothing to worry about with black bears, unless you're like slapping their cubs around or not. But they don't want to. I've been between mother and cubs a whole bunch of times. She wants to reproduce. I love you. See you later. Next year. She wants to be around for next year. It's not a good idea. We humans, of course, we all would fight to the death for our children. Although... don't want to get tested. Bobcats, typical habitat is rocky outcrops. Something with a good view. They love good views. They can sit forever. That's one of their ways of finding prey in winter, is to literally sit and watch and wait. And I've come across bobcat tracks where they sat so long, the snow melted and refroze, and as they moved, it pulled off the hair in their feet. So that's their typical. They want to have a real nice view out into an area. This morning I was tracking bobcat along the lower reaches of Black Mountain in Dummerston. Perfect, kind of rocky outcrops here and there, good view down, open slope, open forest. There's some dense hemlock stands and stuff like that. Perfect place for bobcats. I have the best scat collection ever. Nobody's beat my scat collection. Why is everybody laughing at that? I don't know why. This is winter scat of a coyote. Now, why winter scat? as I said before, the classic predator-prey relationship really does, it exists in textbooks, but it doesn't really exist outside in the natural world. So, a coyote, all summer long, much easier to chase down crickets, and grasshoppers, a few snakes, blueberries, dig up this, dig up that, eat some this. It's so much easier than to chase down a deer. Forget it. Most of the year, I don't want to deal with a deer. It's way too much effort. Way too much effort. But in the winter, when the crickets are all frozen over, and the this and that, and the berries are all gone, I got nothing to do except eat the things that are out there, which are the cute little fuzzy things, the deer and the whatever else. So, during the winter, their diet is mostly meat. Now, coyotes are similar to me. I get a nice big roasted turkey or something, or a chicken, and I want the leg first. After a while, I go for the breast meat, the dry. Anybody here a white meat person? I don't understand it. It's dry and stringy. No, go for the dark meat. After a while, I go for the white meat. This scat tells the same story. The coyote is going to go for the gut meat, generally, first. That's the stuff they have, except for the stomach. But they're going to go for all the organs in one. That they love that stuff. And then they're going to go for the meat. They generally go for the back quarters, and then they kind of move up through the animal, and they'll visit on little goody spots like the brain and tongue, chew up the nose and stuff. But eventually, there's going to be nothing there but hide and skeleton. And if it's February and you're still cold and hungry and there's a skeleton to eat, you're going to eat the skeleton. You're going to chew on the rib bones. They're big enough to break up. They're strong enough to break it open. The leg bones and try to get marrow out. So you're just going to start to ingest a lot of hide at the end of the kill or at the end of the dinner. You're going to start to ingest a lot of hide and you're going to ingest a lot of bones. So what you have is a scat that's white, because it's made up mostly of either hair that's been bleached out or bone meal. So when you see scat like that, that's an old winter scat.
Is this in nature? What's the blue stuff? Is that?
That's called a rock. Rock up here in Vermont, ma'am. They grow out of the fields around here.
That's rock? Okay.
Excellent question. That's one of my plants over there. Thank you, Rena. In scat is all sorts of information. I'm male, I'm female, I'm ready to mate, I'm not ready to mate, I just had a whatever, I'm hungry, this is my territory, this isn't my territory. There's a ton of information in there, generally garnered by other coyotes through the nose. So if you're going to place a classified ad, you're going to put it in the place that has a lot of readership. Thank you, readership. So if I'm going to use my scat to tell a story, I'm going to put it on something that's elevated, so that it goes right into the nose of all the other animals that are coming through. So coyotes and fisher cat are especially famous, but coyotes up on a rock, a slight rise on a trail, a stump that you've cut off on the trail. They'll plant that little turd right up on top, neat as anything. Oh, okay. Another close-up. Look, isn't that beautiful? I mean, gosh. But all hair and bone meal. All hair and bone meal.
And long.
Okay.
I mean,
Maybe
that,
not shot particularly.
You don't have a sense of scale.
no, I don't have a sense. Yeah.
On the rises I've researched towards the end of winter. And they last because they're all hair and bone.
No.
Oh. Why did they last?
Why do they last? Good question. They last because they're freeze-dried. They last. Winter scat, moose winter scat will last 3 years. Moose spring scat will last maybe 3 days, because the winter freeze-dries them. There's no, we have tons of flies and beetles and whatnot that think scat is a fantastic resource. It's a fantastic food resource. They do, but they're not available from, October to April. So all this scat just simply freeze dries, and it's frozen, dried. I'm not going to eat it. But when they start hatching out and new stuff is being produced, bang, they're on it in a minute. I'm quite serious when I say I've got the best scat collection in New England. And I happened to be watching a young bull moose, and it was probably August or so, and there was a small horde of flies right around its anus while I was watching it. And I thought, God, nature is so cruel. The most sensitive, inaccessible part of their body, flies, all like, oh my God, that must be such a... Thank you. But
They were waiting.
they were waiting. All of a sudden, that tail of his started to twitch a little bit, and up it came, and out it came, and I thought, oh my God, that's moose scat that I have to have because I know the species, I know the age. It was in the reproductive rut. Holy crap! I was like, I almost pushed the animal out of the way to get to the fresh. I don't understand why people laugh at this. I tell this at environmental education conferences, and people are going, yeah. Well, by the time I got to that moose scat, there was already fly eggs on it. Indeed, those flies were indeed waiting for an opportunity to lay their eggs. So that's why it's not because of hair; it's because there isn't really anybody to do the cleanup.
Question?
All right.
Question?
Oh yes, right here.
Is there any possibility that the presence of the flies had a secondary effect, or actually a primary one, and that is that they actually stimulated the moose to drop?
Totally possible. Hadn't even thought of that. Totally possible.
Did you hear? Okay.
You spoke about fox putting their scat on a
Yep.
rock or whatever. Would they do it in the middle of the road? I know it sounds crazy, but...
Not often. Not successfully. I got a friend of mine has got a long serpentine driveway. Amazed at the amount of scat on that driveway, fox scat on that driveway.
I lived just down the road here, I can dog out once, and sometimes you find scat, and I would say that was fox, but it'd be on, well, not on the yellow line, but it's pretty close.
Yep.
And out there, it can be seen.
Yeah. Probably where it can be seen, yeah, true, and also
well, they
smell.
Nose down, they do their eyesight.
Yeah. Next time you see it, get down on all fours and see it.
What are you doing here? I got to
Oh, yeah, I think that's probably, without
She
seeing
thinks
it,
it's
whatnot,
delicious.
that's
Yeah.
probably
Oh, there's
fox.
foxes around there.
The other thing to think about, though, is depending on size and whatnot, and this will fool you, and I'm being dead serious, American toads have the largest turd you can imagine. I mean, a good size American toad will have a scat that long and probably as thick as my finger. They're amazing. But if you look at it, it's all skeleton parts of insects. So it's definitely. And so if there's a light right there, like a street light or so, where there might be bugs around, an American toad might have realized, that's a good place for hunts. And that's what it was. Yeah.
It seems to me wildlife loves to go on the ski trails and the snowmobile trails. I mean, you see the tracks. It's easier to walk.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. If I can spend less calories and still get my food resource at the end of the day, score. So yeah, trails are a great place.
Back to the flies.
I like you.
On one of your plants. If in fact that could be true, that the fly presence actually stimulates, okay, would that then classify the situation as a symbiotic relationship between fly and moose?
Well, to be clear, all relationships are symbiotic. If I walk over to you and kill you, that's a symbiotic relationship. We miss, I'm just being anal. That was not a planned joke. I'm just being anal. It is a, not mutualistic, not,
Parasitic?
Pardon me?
It's not parasitic.
No, it wouldn't be parasitic. Parasitic is also a symbiotic relationship.
Antagonistic.
No.
It could be mutualism.
Consensual.
Mutual. Yeah, mutual. Consensual, yeah. I think that's I'm going to think on that one. That's a fascinating concept. It's a fascinating concept.
Well, if you were a moose and you knew that the one way to get rid of those flies was to take a dump, wouldn't you take one?
If I thought like a human in a moose's body, yes, I would. But think about this.
But that's a natural occurrence, that's cause and effect, what you're talking about.
If you go out in the woods and you get something on you, let's say a tick. Everybody's freaked about ticks. Oh my God! But if you're born out in the natural world, fleas, ticks, lice, all that load is completely natural. You wake up in the morning and you feel right with your world because you got these bugs itching. It feels right.
But a moose will put its head right in the water as more deer to get rid of the flies.
Yeah. But these flies, I suspect, I don't know, I suspect are not biting flies.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. You're right about
Okay, we'll
that.
try to get rid of them.
Yeah, you're right about that. All right. Coyote.
Wow.
Again, always stop at mud puddles. Dry up mud puddles are the most perfect places in the world. Coyote tracks. It's going to everybody's right. Beautifully symmetrical. Beautifully symmetrical. I mean, these things are like they should be in the Louvre. These coyote tracks are so beautifully symmetric. The front toes are symmetric to each other. The front toes are symmetric to the back pad. The side toes are symmetric to each other and symmetric to the back pad. Coyote tracks are perfectly symmetrical. They're just aligned. They're just great things. The toes, they're not, the claws rather, they're not splayed. They're not out there very far. Think of your dog. Your dog has been raised on linoleum and hardwood floors, and all the ligaments and whatnot in that toes have all been spread out and smushed out, and they've got sloppy tracks. If you've got an animal that runs often out in the woods and whatnot, different story. But for the most part, domestic dogs don't have this beautiful symmetry to themselves. The claws aren't terribly out there because they're being worn down. They're being used every day. And as I said before, with canines, the toes encompass a larger amount proportionally than the pad. So the pads on canines are smaller. The toes, collectively and proportionally, are larger, cover a larger surface area with canines.
What's the little one?
What's the little one? What's the little one?
In the corner.
Oh, good eyes! Right there.
Yeah, and here.
Good eyes. And here is in too. That is probably chipmunk. I recall where this was. This was a oak forest area, and chipmunks love rocky oak forest places. Coyote, your classic New England coyote. They tend to be pretty large animals. Don't let anybody fool you. They can be very large. A 50-pound coyote is kind of reaching it, but they're out there. Lots of research, lots of thoughts on where coyote come from. The best theories that I've heard were they're a cross between something and something. Yeah, wolves and western coyote, I think.
Yes. Timber wolf and western coyote.
Red wolf.
Smaller wolf.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
became bigger when they
However, this is something that's always intrigued me, and this is going to be like your fly thing. It's going to sit in my back of my mind. Is when we first got onto this continent, we described two wolves, a brush wolf and a timber wolf. We know what the timber wolf is. That translates easy enough. But what was this brush wolf? And I suspect that it was the coyote. and we just simply extirpated is the real word, it out of its range, and now it's coming back. But I don't know. I haven't really bought one way or the other what a New England coyote is. But a New England coyote is a bigger animal than a western coyote, and thus the interbreeding of the wolves with bigger bodies and whatnot.
It's always been here.
Hopefully this thing will... Oh, good. Okay. And, of course, deer. White-tailed deer. We all tend to think of white-tailed deer and coyote. That's the classic predator prey. But there's a whole lot of other things that will affect the deer population. Now, just to be fully disclosure, I'm a hunter. I shoot, kill, and eat things. And every hunter will, at one point, say they didn't get the deer because there's too many coyotes. Hogwash. You're just not, no. You're like me. You just don't have the skill to get the damn animal. The deer, the New England deer and the New England coyote, they have co-evolved. It's the two of them in a perfectly balanced dance throughout millennium. The reason that the deer is so graceful is because of the pressure that the coyote has put upon them. The reason that the coyote is such an intelligent, crafty animal is because of the animal that it has to subsist on, which in winter, of course, is white-tailed deer, amongst other things. It's not a bad relationship. It's this relationship that continues to evolve. It's a wonderful dance between these two classic animals. That's how we should be looking at the predator-prey relationship. If a deer dies in the woods, it's a good thing because of a whole host of other things that occur. If a coyote dies in the woods, it's a good thing because of a whole host of other things. If the tree gets hit by lightning, it's a good thing that it dies because there's a whole host of other things that it's set up. All right, deer browse. I just wanted to show you a little bit of classic deer browse. This will never be an oak tree, although it's trying desperately to be an oak tree. The deer come and they snip off a little bit of it here, and the side shoots grow, and the deer come back and snip off another piece, and the side shoots grow. Same thing going on here. This oak tree will never exist. It's going to be completely pruned and eaten, and it just doesn't have the energy to keep going, and it will die, which is a good thing, because then bark beetles will have something to eat, and other little critters will have something to eat. Here's just a couple of series of fox. We're nearly at the tail end of the program. This is a gray fox. Gray fox. As opposed to our red fox. Now, if you go and listen to textbooks, red foxes live in close proximity to humans. Gray foxes tend to be wilderness animals. One summer, I was too darn busy and missed the opportunity. I had a family of gray foxes den in my barn, in the basement of my barn. They raised the litter right underneath my nose, and I never saw it until they were gone. And at the time, this particular barn was in a neighborhood, total neighborhood. We would sit on the porch, drinking beer, and watch the gray fox walk down the street. We got pretty good at calling in gray fox, which is "arr." It's as simple as it is. A-R-E. Arr. Just a guttural "arr." Arr. There you go. Arr. 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 Yes.
I watched a fox cross Route 9 at Amherst College. Was that red or gray?
Yeah. What did you see? Did you see red or see gray?
I don't remember. I did know that it was a fox. I thought that you might have an intimate acquaintance with it.
No. Although there's an owl that lives nearby. That's a gray. That's a red. So maybe that'll jog your memory. They're about the same height. The most everything in nature looks far bigger than it actually is. So a fox is about the size of your cat. They stand about 12 inches at shoulder. They're not terribly big. I guess some diagnostics. The red fox tends to have its tail out that way, whereas the gray fox tends to have its tail a little lower. But from my personal experience, grays and reds really inhabit a similar range. Let me turn off this.
Did they interbreed?
I do not know the answer to that at all. All right. If we can throw up some lights, and then we can do question and answer. Yes.
I once saw a gray fox, a red fox, and what looked like a black fox playing together. How unlikely is that?
Well, if you had started with, I once saw a cat, a gray fox, a red fox, and a black fox, then I'd say, yeah, that's very likely. For some reason, there's actually a relationship between cats and foxes. They're not far off, actually. Gray fox and red fox, gray fox and red fox, gray fox and red fox climb trees.
Really?
Everybody says, oh, it's only gray. It's not. Red fox and gray fox climb trees. And all canines have semi-retractable claws.
Oh, really?
Well, watch your dog, right? Your dog stretches out, and you see more of its claws. That's because they're semi-retractable.
I've examined the claws of a gray fox that had been hit by a car to my saw. We've been sort of acquainted.
Yep.
And they were so cat-like, it surprised me.
Yep.
They were not dog-like. And that, you're saying, would have been true had it been a red fox too?
Yep. Yep. Although, gray fox are interesting because they have vertical slits in their pupil, like a cat. So it is kind of, how far away from a cat are you, actually?
Gray fox has the slit?
Gray fox have a vertical slit, and red fox have a pupil, a typical pupil.
Are their claws, are dogs the same? They must be different claws. I mean, my dog can't climb a tree. My dog can't climb a tree.
There's some breeds that can. And the trick in climbing trees, if you're any animal, a bear or anybody, is in the wrist. It's the ability to turn the wrist. That's what does it. Because animals, the front paws hug the tree. We tend to think of climbing trees like you climb a ladder. That's not how animals climb trees. So if you see a bear hugs and then uses its back feet to propel itself up. So it's in the wrist. And with fisher cats, squirrels, gray fox, red fox, it's in the wrist, the articulation of the wrist. It's not necessarily the claws. Claws are damn help, but yeah.
Could you, excuse me, could you move up here so we can...
Oh, excellent idea. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me just grab a sip. All right. I think you had a question. Yes.
Say that a fox, a red or a gray, that says a cat.
Yeah.
You've got an awful big cat there, friend. Well, I've got a mounted gray fox in my living room.
Yeah.
And I took it down there and cleaned it up. That's going to be a dang big cat.
Here it is. I'm so glad you asked that. I shot and killed her, which is an American black bear, in Massachusetts. She weighed 170 pounds. As a hunter, I'm not going around bragging that I killed a 170-pound bear. But if it happened to be a way out one, oh yeah, I got a 300-pounder for sure. Holy cow! So what happens is we understand that this is the typical. This is the typical. A 175-pound black bear standing about knee-high at its shoulder is the typical New England black bear. That's the typical New England black bear. So we remember that Uncle Harry got the 325-pound. We celebrated it for the whole year. The whole family got drunk. So whoever went through the effort of taxiderming that fox didn't pick the scrawniest one with mange. Pick the good sized one.
Could it also be maybe a male?
Maybe a who?
A male fox? I don't know. There's no way of telling, but just.
Yeah, there is a way of tanning
Yeah,
males.
but not.
Well, the only reason I pause is some animals, the males are bigger. Some animals, the males are smaller. I mean, birds, for instance. Almost all birds, the males are smaller. Females are bigger. And I can't answer that. I don't really know. But there was a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
All the animals that you showed us so far, as you've described, appeared to be omnivorous. Is that true?
Is there a second part to that?
There is.
Okay.
Because then the first slide showed us a little red squirrel, which you said would eat baby birds, and I did not realize that they also would eat other animals. Are they also omnivorous?
Well, thank you for saying all that. Any opportunity is going to be taken. Beavers, as we all know, are herbivores. They eat vegetable material. No, they'll eat bugs. But, so that makes them a carnivore, because bug meat is... Right, but if you look at their teeth, they're strictly herbivores. Strictly herbivores. But if you look at almost any, what you would consider a predator, what you would consider a carnivore in New England, if you look at the teeth, there's lots of evidence of being an omnivore. Our teeth, classic our teeth.
It's got a human skull.
Yeah, really. I so want to find somebody dead in the woods. Oh.
Just don't tell us to shop.
Oh. Yeah, anybody want to go for a walk tonight? This is a blow-up, if you will, an exaggeration of our teeth. Everybody here has got incisors, canines, forget these, premolars and molars. Everybody here has got them.
I did have them.
Yeah, really. Some of them have less than you used to. You used to. The canines are to hold something that is alive until you get a chance to eat it.
Is that it?
The incisors, the front teeth here, are for picking things like blueberries or simple little things. The back is for crushing things, and that goes the range from bones to acorns. So the tools of the trade indicate that almost everybody out there is an omnivore. You know, almost. All right. Other questions? Yes.
A couple of weeks ago we had coyotes that were just making a racket night after night, but very unusual was that we heard a barking a lot that sounded very different. It wasn't several of them together, it was just one. And it sounded like a dog, but it was in an area where there shouldn't have been any dogs. Somebody explained that because we have a new puppy, probably they're sending one out to bark to attract, draw it out. Does that sound likely? And the part B to that question is, how big does our puppy need to be before we can let it wander at night without us walking right next to it before there's danger?
I'm afraid to answer that because I don't want you to sue me when, how expensive is your puppy? Just as a side, this introduces another topic of mine. There's an author by the name of David Abram, and he has recently written, or actually I'm recently reading, Becoming Animal, a fantastic book. It will change the way you look at so many things. David Abram, Becoming Animal. And he talks about that. I can't remember what he says, because it is kind of a rural legend that they do that to, they're going to, come here, little puppy dog, But he puts a spin on it, and darn it, I can't remember what the spin is. But it is more like the common ancestral bonds between canines. It's a dance of words. It's not predator-prey. It's not deception. It's this amazing between the species, like, wow. But
So if we let her out, they'll go dance around the woods for a while, and then she'll come back.
yeah, I wouldn't trust it. I wouldn't trust it. I would. Yeah.
Is it true, as I've read, that the fisher is effective getting porcupines because the fisher can be above the porcupine? The porcupine can only be facing up the trunk. The fisher's hind feet turn around and you've got wrists just like the front feet, so it can hang by its hind feet and then scratch at the porcupine's face.
I'll kind of buy all of that, except I haven't, in my mind, I haven't seen enough porcupines in motion. They tend to be very, doing nothing. And I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a porcupine climb down face first.
No. The porcupine goes up face first, can't climb down, but the fisher can go down face first because its hind feet turn just like its front feet.
Right.
And it's got I've forgotten the technical term, but its hind wrists are like its front wrists, so it can hang.
Yeah. Same thing with the squirrels, do the same thing. But the crux, the problem that I'm having is in my mind, I can't justify the comment that porcupines can't climb down front.
Oh, I see.
So I can't answer that. Holy cow. Yeah.
You've not mentioned wolves. Do we have any wolves around?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
How much do they weigh?
And we have, there are more. I don't know enough about wolves really to speak, but yes, we have wolves, and yes, we have cougar, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yes. But, good on this is we love to introduce things. We love to let nature do its course. When the habitat has all these amazing steps to support a whole diversity of things, from beetles to gray fox, that's when an animal like a cougar will come in. But here's another thing is, okay, we've got cougars here, but they've got such a vast, huge range that it's difficult to say where is here. I mean, I've been seen in Boston. I've also been seen in Putney. Well, where? But that's how you should think of an animal like a cougar. They've got a huge, huge range. There was one that was killed in Connecticut.
From South Dakota.
Yeah. I haven't read any technical stuff to believe any of that, but really? I mean, that's a range, man. No, I'm sorry. There was somebody else.
I understood that the fisher was brought into Vermont or to reduce the population of porcupines, and it seems to me that they've been overly successful, and they've had to move on to chickens.
Opportunities. There's plenty of porcupines still out there. There's plenty of fish cats. There's plenty of other things that everybody's going to eat. But if I'm a fisher cat and I see somebody setting out food for me and maintaining a food supply for me, I'm going to take it. And the same thing is if I find a cache of food, how many of us will find money on the ground, pick it up, and leave change for somebody else, right? We take it all. Well, somebody walks into your chicken coop. I'm going to kill every one of these freaking things, and I'll be back day after day after. But we look at it and go, bloodthirsty animals. They kill just for the pleasure of it. No, they kill so the damn thing would stop moving around, so they come back the next day and eat it, or the next week even. Yes.
So you don't think that the number of porcupines has been affected by the...
No, some speakers will affect it. I don't mean that as a joke. Sorry.
I have two scat questions. The first is that I was walking in the woods. I saw a kill site. I think it was a squirrel. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
The next day, there was coyote poop right on there. Now, would that have been the same? Like, would a coyote eat and then poop the next day on the same spot, like another coyote? Like what? Just whatever ideas you have about that.
Yeah, I love these questions because I don't know. Then I can run with it a long distance. Very often animals will defecate or urinate. Now, us, we think that's but they're claiming, theoretically, they're claiming ownership of
That's
this.
what I was wondering, was it the same, whatever, whoever ate it doing it? Okay, the
Yeah.
second question is, twice I've seen this winter, what I would, if it wasn't winter, I would think it was bear scat, because it's so big. So big, and it has, it was right on the ski trail, and on the one time, it was all apple, like 100% apple, like a bear would be. And the other time, which was this morning, it had pistachio nuts with the shells on, sunflower seeds with no shells on, and corn, among other, among just like what I couldn't tell what else it was. And it was just so freaking big, I couldn't believe it. It couldn't be raccoon. I had no idea what it was.
That's bear.
Yeah. So it wasn't exactly that big, but only a little smaller than that. It's like this big.
Yep. Yeah.
I couldn't tell tracks. The snow was so corny. Go ahead.
Cross-country skiers.
You're right.
It was the pistachios that did it.
I really rolled it out.
Blunt ends. With bears, blunt
Yeah,
ends.
it's blunt ends.
Bear.
But in the winter?
It's cold.
It's very cold.
See, you've been reading too many textbooks. Yeah, you've been reading too many textbooks. Bears don't. Oh my God! Oh, okay. The textbooks say we got to be in it. I get up, I move around a little bit. Well, it has very little to do with temperature. It has really very little to do. But bears will go out and they'll meander around, or they'll take a long time. There was one particular male I was following almost all winter, never went to den. So, yeah. I don't. Do you still have that one? Because I don't have pistachio. This is me. I got walnut, but I don't have pistachio. That's pretty good. Yes.
Coyotes do eat meat in the summer, right?
If given the easy opportunity, it's much easier to. Well, I mean,
they'll go after livestock in the summer.
I don't have strong experience with that, and I'm way too much in a rural enclave to say yes or no on that without being lynched. But it's so much easier to be eating grasshoppers and berries and going after. But everybody's an opportunist, so somebody's.
I just wondered if it would be something else more likely than coyote, because they got eaten.
Well, what livestock you talking about?
Well, it was like 6 years ago, but young calves and somebody else lost sheep.
Dog.
Can be dog, can be bear, can be coyote.
Nothing left but an ear tag.
Say again?
Nothing left but an ear tag.
Wow. Seriously?
Alien.
Yeah.
That is not a dog.
My understanding is that in the mid-1960s is when vultures started coming up to Vermont. And the explanation I was told was that they were following the interstate because of carrion. My question is, are there other animal populations that were affected by interstate?
Yeah. Actually, one I just absolutely love. Grass. New England is loaded with prairie grass.
Oh, really?
Because of the interstates. We have. We have tons of prairie grass now in New England because of the interstates. Anybody who travels the interstates, like this month, every single big bird on the side of the road is a red-tailed hawk. They didn't. They are here already, but that's a perfect grassland for them. The vulture and the interstate. I got to talk with you more. You got some really interesting concepts. But the vulture for me is actually a symbol of wilderness. And most vultures nowadays hit the carrion patches of like dairy farms and stuff, where there's a dead calf off to the side or a dead cow off to the side, or certainly in the 1960s, garbage, a garbage dump, not a transfer station anymore. But they need to nest You know, in terms of animals, there's a lot of different components. And in terms of an animal, a successful population of vultures, you need a place to nest. You need a place to nest. And they are extremely shy nesters. And on top of that, vultures are ground nesters.
Oh, really?
Ground nesters. Ground nesters under things. So you're walking through an area and there's like cliff overhangs. That's where they nest. They don't build anything. They just drop the eggs. It's sitting right there. But they will completely abandon their nest site with eggs or with young, if bothered. Most birds will fly off, squat, and come back. But a vulture will say, screw it, and done. So oddly enough, they're a bird, a symbol of wilderness to me. They got to be out there. A successful population. Now, having said that, vultures, great soarers, they can travel big distances back and forth from roost sites and from feeding sites. All right. Question over here? No. Yes?
I wanted to ask about rabbits. I've seen, rabbit markings in the snow, but I've never seen them.
Oh.
I've never seen a rabbit.
So,
Yes.
say again?
Are there lots of rabbits around?
In my personal opinion, there's lots of rabbits around. And there are three types of rabbits. There's New England cottontail. There's
Eastern.
Thank you. Eastern cottontail. I was going to say southern, which you can almost not tell hand in hand which they are. And then of course there's hares. There's snowshoe hare.
Here?
Yeah, the snowshoe hare here. As a matter of fact, I forgot to take my snowshoe hare feet, but I have snowshoe hare feet. Snowshoe hare tend to be more deep woods animals. Their trails are distinctive. They got really big feet, like snowshoes. They're the speed demon of the rabbits. They can really put out the speed. Yes?
Oh, I was just going to say, it's very hard to find a cottontail around here. At least I never have.
No, right, they just don't. It's really confusing sometimes. Rabbit tracks are really squirrel tracks and just spread out. So we really don't have a lot of cottontail rabbits for sure. And we have very little snowshoe hare in this particular area too. So.
I mean, I was just tracking some on Wantasket in Brattleboro. Snowshoe. Yeah.
Somebody said that Wantasket is one of the last places where the New England cottontail is still found.
And you know what else? They have whippoorwills
On Wantasket?
on Wantastic.
Oh.
I was in the Walmart parking lot, I hate to admit it.
It just did close.
On a summer night, and I hadn't heard a whippoorwill in like 40 years. And
Did you hear or see it?
I heard it.
Okay.
And I commented to one of those fellows that was collecting the carts. And he said, yeah, they're here all the time. Now, that was the old Walmart. But that's, yeah, who knows what happened to those?
Before I forget, I have my business cards over there in case anybody wants to contact me, and I also have a sign-up sheet for email if you want to do any correspondence with me. As I said, I do a 6-month-long intensive course called the Intensive Field Studies course. It's my baby. I love teaching it because I get you for 6 months, and I bend and break and mold you into a naturalist. It's anyways.
the center that you...
In Northfield, Mass, that's where I started it, but in reality, it's all over the place, depending on where I go and where my students are.
Where you are.
Well, it's actually where my students are. I mean, if I get a whole sugar load of students from Montpelier, most of and the Intensive Field Studies course is very little of its classroom. Mother Nature is where you're going to actually learn something. So even though I can teach you a lot, my job as a facilitator to get you in front of Mother Nature, because she's the one that's really going to teach you a whole bunch. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Oh, yes.
I just have a definitional question that probably 80% of this audience can answer. You've talked about fisher cats. What's the difference between a fisher cat and a bobcat?
Huge differences. in terms of size, shape, species, range, mating behavior. A fisher cat is the body in from the toe to the butt end, from the nose to the butt end is about this long, and its tail is about that long. A bobcat is named a bobcat because it's got a bob tail. A bobcat tail is about that long. A fisher cat stands probably that tall at hip or shoulder, whereas a bobcat is about that tall, much longer legs, A fisher cat is this beautiful sable mink brown. The males tend to have a nice grizzled gray, little spattering of gray hair in the front. They tend to kind of gray, darker in the back. And a bobcat is varied. I mean, it's a dappled, fawn, beige, spotty. It's an extremely different animal. Extremely different animal.
Is a fisher cat a cat?
A fisher cat is neither a cat nor a fisher person.
Does it have a different?
It is a weasel. Fisher cat is a weasel. Is a weasel.
What is their
Weasel. Weasel. It's a weasel.
And what is their range, and do they like towns, villages?
Yeah. Yeah. I had this is not a village or a town kind of answer, but I had somebody call me from Marblehead, Massachusetts, with a fisher cat hanging around their bird feeder. Range is very dependent on quality of habitat. So a fisher cat can have a very small range that is a very good habitat, or it has to have a very large range because it's a poor.
What states are they found in?
Pretty much yes. I mean, I might go, gee, I'd be surprised to see one in Florida, but they're certainly all over New England, all over the East. I don't know how far west they go, but bobcat are the same thing. Bobcat has a huge range across the country.
A good range for a fisher cat would be it has lots of porcupines?
You're gonna have to come back to you're gonna have to come back to this program again. You're gonna have to repeat this program. a good range for a fisher cat would include a variety of habitats with squirrels and porcupines and blueberry bushes and crickets and house cats, certainly nest in lots of sunspots. Good nesting spots, which is very often hollow trees. Good standing hollow trees. That's a great place for them. I mean, we're doing an awful lot of talking about what animals eat, but they breed too, and so they have to raise what the consequences of that breeding are, and so they need good nest spots. All right. Yes.
What's the difference between a fisher cat and a fisher?
Yeah, no.
Same thing.
Lynxes? Do we have lynx?
I know Maine does. I don't know if it extends up to northern. Northern, yeah, maybe.
They've been photographed in northern Vermont.
Very northern Vermont.
Well, I've been photographed in Maine.
Well, that's because you were there.
Right, but that's not my range. You know, they're incidentals. But I would say yes. What you're saying is yeah. And lynx are a bobcat version, but in a deep snow environment, where lynx specialize in deep snow, and bobcat would founder and not have. And the same is true with fisher cat. Fisher cat are a low snow habitat, and pine martens, which is a much smaller animal, is a high snow, deep snow. They go underneath the snow to chase the squirrels underneath.
Oh.
Yes.
Aren't lynx about 2 or 3 times as big as bobcats?
I'll go 2, maybe 2, but yeah. Bigger animal, tufts on their hair, huge feet. I mean, just like a teenager, never grew up kind of huge feet.
Wouldn't their legs be inclined to be longer because of the deeper snow?
With what?
Wouldn't their legs?
They are longer.
They got the big feet, but they're gonna have the long ones too.
Yep. Yeah, they're a longer, much lankier looking bobcat. Yeah. Yes.
Would you say just a couple of things about wolves?
They're beautiful.
Farley Moat did an amazing study on wolves. The Canadian government said, go up there and find out that they're eating all the caribou in this
Right.
region. And he found out that they subsist almost 100% on voles, little tiny mice. So here again, we have this focus about what predators are supposed to do. Wolves
No.
should...
That is a delightful read.
Yep. What's it? What is it?
I
It's
don't
Farley
remember.
Moat, but...
Never
Okay.
It's a hilarious movie.
Yep. Never Cry Wolf, Farley Moat.
He has recipes in there for rolls too.
Right, right.
You said wolves are here. Where? When you said, what did you mean that they're here? Where?
Again, it's the range, like coming through. You got one coming through. Yep, they're around. So I don't know of, or I don't not know of any sightings in Massachusetts, and I do not know of, and do not know of any sightings in Vermont that I can pick up out of my head. Yeah.
I had a few acquaintances that just talked about a couple of experiences where coyotes seem to show uncharacteristically aggressive behavior toward them. I didn't know whether, is there a trend toward, well, in one case, my cousin was sleeping in his backyard right next to the house, and actually several coyotes surrounded his tent and just started howling and barking aggressively. And another, you're doubting this. Okay.
Oh, you bet your butt. I can't wait to finish
Well, okay.
on this one.
He's a little less reliable than this other guy.
What was he doing in his tent?
But there were, I think there were 3 coyotes, and they just kind of started to kind of spread out and face him as if maybe they were just, I don't know what their typical hunting behavior is, but, you know, they didn't just prance off and get away and say, okay, we're done here, but they just started to spread out. And I don't know, some, you know, folks say we've encroached so much on their environment and they need to be, but on the other hand, I've never heard of anyone being attacked by a coyote. I've never heard of a human being, and I tend to say, well, if that's happening, it would be, but.
I like to tell stories, so please give me the license to tell a story in this one. I did a program on black bears, one of my specialties. The other one is bats, but black bears. And some guy said, yeah, I was a pair of black bears, young black bears, chased me up a tree. And so afterwards, I talked to the guy, and what happened is everybody was scared in this particular encounter. Everybody was scared. And the 2 cubs were the yearling, you know, they decided to pick a tree to climb up. They picked up the very same tree that this guy. So the interpretation was they came right up the tree after me. No, they were like, oh, Mom said get the hell out of Dodge, and I'm climbing the first tree. Well, it happened to have a human in it. And, so that's what happens with our observations, is we interpret things. Like, okay, they're all barking around the guy's tent. Maybe they're excited, they're curious, because they are extremely intelligent animals. They're curious as to what is this. They've never smelled gin and whiskey together in the same tent. So they're curious. And we have expectation that all animals should be running from us. So when they don't, there's something wrong. Maybe they're just curious. Maybe so. And there was one person that was killed on Cape Cod last year, maybe year before, a child, with coyotes. But that stuff sells newspapers. That stuff sells newspapers. If the truth was reported, which means that there are 20,000, I'm totally picking a number, 20,000 coyotes in Massachusetts, in New England, and for the last 364 days, there has never been a negative interaction. Nobody would buy the newspaper. But everybody wants to hear about that person that got killed on Cape Cod. So again, like the big gray fox on your mantle, or the 325-pound bear that Uncle George shot, it puts it into your mind that these extremes are out there. So no, there's never been any. Literally, you don't have anything to worry about in the woods. The only thing I fear in the woods is stepping on a ground nesting bees. That's the only thing I fear.
I guess I've heard the idea that when we hear coyotes howling, groups of them, it's really the puppies howling for their parents. Is there any truth in that? Or what are they doing?
I hate to answer a question like this and say I don't know, but I gotta lean on the truth, Ken.
It's an unearthly sound.
Oh my God! It's like my lover's calling me. It's a beautiful sound. Sorry, I went way too far on that one. Yeah.
I like it too, but we had a weird experience, Steve, a while back with coyotes last summer. No, it was cold, so late summer. When my dogs in the house started to fuss and came to wake me, and I realized there was quite a chorus outside. We were all fenced, and we just enjoyed it until it was over, and then they left. The next morning, my dogs came to get me again and said, "Ma, there's something weird going on." And there was a dead coyote inside the fence. And do they have funerals? I just definitely.
Wow.
Did you?
It's a territorial dispute.
Was it dismembered in any way?
No, it looked perfectly healthy.
What'd you do with it?
We buried him. For her.
There's the answer to your question.
Boy, that's a great one. I don't know. I'm glad you're standing next door to him because he's got a good mind for things like that. What do you think? I really like the way. I gotta introduce myself. What do you think? Yeah, you.
Loosely speaking, elephants at funerals, very loosely speaking. I don't know about other animals, but I would think most likely that it would be a distress situation. That they were trying to connect or retrieve it.
The others did not come inside the fence and easily could have.
Say again?
Pardon?
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
The others, the ones who were singing or whatever it's called, did not come inside the fence. Only the one who was dead.
And they easily could have
They
come in
could
the
have
fence.
done.
But they knew the other one was dead.
There were no tracks or anything. There was no.
Very, very interesting. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Yes.
I heard a chorus of coyotes from our deck one evening, maybe 9 or 10 o'clock at night, totally dark. And I went and got my husband, and he came out and stood on the deck, and we listened and so forth. And the minute he shone a light in the direction that we thought the sound was coming, it stopped in mid-yip. It was just like...
Wow.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all.